Hi guys, Raynal here. Today we're talking about Moore the Merrier. Now that we have access to her full kit and that I've seen her fight a couple times, I'm ready to do a full review on her rather than just guessing what her impact on the meta will be. And my initial thoughts are that she has way better numbers than I thought she would have. I figured she would rely on her status effects more than anything, but she actually has top tier magic attacker stats, which is quite surprising for me. I think as a manual unit, she will be fantastic. The combination of quicken and haste and then all the power she has by herself is just insane. For Odo, it might be a little bit trickier, mostly because the AI is not good at using time magic. You either have to turn off a lot of stuff to make it work, or it can be quite wonky during a fight. So let's begin. She is a very bulky unit. For a mage and a unit with the level of damage she has, she survives surprisingly long, unless the enemy has re-raise removal, in which case she has kind of an average bulk. She hits relatively hard, but doesn't have the 5x5 super large AoE, so she's not going to catch 3 people quite often in an AoE. You can expect 1 or 2 people to be hit by her abilities in general. She's got really good debuffs. Most of them are tied to status effects, so the enemies could resist them, but Moore has really high status effect chances compared to just about anybody else in the game, so that is quite impressive. And then she has access to Rune Knight subjob, which will be very important in the near future, as the next tank to be released is going to be able to absorb magical attacks that are reflectable. Moore would be really in a bad spot when Celeste is released, but since she has access to the Rune Knight subjob, she will have some abilities that can actually hit through that, so she won't be completely helpless against her. Before I dive much deeper, I want to touch on status effect quickly. Now, I have released a video in the past on status effect formula and how it works. If you want to watch that, I'll link it in the description below. But I'll also link a Reddit post that was made very recently, and we can hop on that right now. It was published by Izanagi001, and he's made an infographic that explains the formula and then what the proc chances will be depending on how you set her up, and then the fate of your target. And it is very complete, very well made. I'll link that as well in the description below. I won't read it on screen, but I definitely recommend you take a look at it because it's just very, very well made, and it's going to be useful for you guys. So let's look at her stats before we dive in deeper, and Moore has a really high amount of HP at 3700. It's more than the Black Rose, which is quite good. She has a really high magic at 587 as well, but is rather slow. Out of all those mages, she does have an agility up passive, but still, she's not catching up to a Regalia Glaciala anytime soon. 61 is in the low end of the newer batch of units, so that is not her greatest asset. Decent luck, average dexterity as well, so nothing out of the park here. Her resistances are really good. I expected her to be squishier than that, but she's got positive resistances to slash, missile, and magic, which are the 3 most important damage types in my opinion. And then status effect resistance to slow, okay. To charm, very good for manual, not really impactful elsewhere. And this is part of why I think she's such a fantastic manual unit. So overall, her stat line is definitely comparable to other cost 100 units, and she's only a cost 90, so very solid stat line altogether. Now, if we're looking at her kit, first of all, her master ability is wind-oriented. It provides everybody with the usual bonuses, and then herself with some extra magic and 15 accuracy. And if you want to build more with a lot of accuracy, you can definitely do that. If you get her VC, even better. But even just with a Typhoon VC, she gets 15 accuracy there. You can equip an accurate Esper. She's got 15 from her master ability, and you have access to one of those passives from the Rune Knight subjob that gives you 20 more, and then one of her buff that gives her 30. She can be incredibly accurate and never miss if you want her to be built that way, so that is definitely interesting in face of the light evasion meta or enemies like sort of Elena. And then in terms of passives, what I would equip most of the time, if you're not fighting a very evady team, I would equip the Thriving Mentality, providing her with magic and agility up, and then I would always equip the Toxins and Sedatives. I believe you want the extra chance to poison and sleep, because if you looked at the infographic I linked earlier, if you're going to look at it, it is incredibly strong. A unit that gets some extra chances on their statuses, it can go from a 50% base chance to almost 100% when you factor in the Faith, just moving from that extra 15. It is a very, very strong passive, and I think it's one you always want equipped on her, and then you jump with the other slot depending on what you need. Either, I would say, Sharp Mind if you need to be more accurate, or just go for Thriving Mentality because magic and agility is always good stats to have. Then for the counter ability, there are a couple choices. I don't think she's going to struggle too much in the AP department, so magic commutation will probably not be necessary. So I would equip Mind over Magic more often than not, mostly because there are such powerful mages that are going to deal significant damage to her, and since she has high faith herself, even if she's bulky, having a magic barrier is going to help her quite a bit because she will be taking extra damage from her high faith herself. Then, as I like to say, counters that don't have a range will always have a chance to proc. If your enemy's attacking you from very far away, you don't have a chance to proc slow counter. You do have a chance, however, to reduce the damage if it's magical, so you'll have more opportunities to trigger the counter as well. So let's take a look at her main job, and I took away the non-EX abilities because it was taking way too much space. Even as is, I think it's fairly small. But her first ability is a missile attack, so she has a single one in her kit. If the enemy has very high magic resistance, at least she can use this, but it's not her best ability. All it does is a chance to poison, and this one's instance of poison will not apply all the other debuffs that she can apply elsewhere in her kit, so it's not that great. Then she's got an AoE buff, which is decent. It's going to give Defense and Spirit 20 to everyone, and then a 20% regen for herself only. 20% regen is something we've never seen before. Typically, it only capped at 10%, but since she can't affect the rest of her team, it's not going to be incredibly impactful. I expect that to be somewhere around 1800 for her, depending on how much HP she's got. So it's good, but it's not like you're going to be casting that on everyone, right? It's only going to be impacting her, and she doesn't have any other healing in her kit, so I mostly like the extra defense and spirit coming from this. And then the ability you absolutely want her to use, you might have to turn off some other stuff, but you need her to use this absolutely, is her re-raise ability. This one will give her a re-raise, and as long as she hasn't died one and lost the re-raise status, or as long as the re-raise status does not get dispelled, she's going to have a buff that provides her with extra magic, accuracy, and healing power. Now, she's not a healer, so the healing power will mostly impact incoming heals from other units, but extra magic and accuracy is incredibly useful for a magic attacker. This does not affect any re-raise she gets. It needs to be from the specific ability. So if, for example, the Yuna would cast re-raise on her again after she's lost it, the other buffs will not come back. They are really tied to her own cast and her own ability. And then they can be dispelled separately. So if she receives a Dispel Spread or another ability that dispels, they will be lost. That's the way these abilities work. Still, it's a fantastic ability. Just re-raise is great, so if it has added bonuses until it's lost, it's just incredibly good. Then she's got Soul Sedation. It's her highest mod ability, so 200% mod will deal significant damage. And then you have a chance to put enemies to sleep, and from what I've understood, if you have an effect that gives you AP refresh, so if she has bells on, or if she's used the Meridian Channel ability first, then she has extra chances to put the enemy to sleep, and it becomes almost guaranteed. If you're not aware, a sleeping target, on the next attack they take 50% more damage. So even if you're fighting an enemy that can tank your damage pretty well, you're guaranteeing extra attacks. So you might think, oh, sleep's not that useful in autoplay because my allies will hit and wake the enemy up. Yes, but you still get 50% extra damage on that one hit, so it's not bad even then. Then I think her bread and butter is going to be the Divine Toxicology. It's one of her AoE attacks. It's also her longest range attack, and it has a chance to poison. If it does poison, it decreases defense, spirit, and healing power. So it completely nullifies the enemy's capability to survive, which I think is incredibly good. I expected a defense and spirit down to be somewhere around 20 or 15, but 30 down for all these stats and 50 down healing power is just very, very strong. So, and even if you're targeting an enemy that has some poison resistance, if it's only a 25% poison resistance, she is going to still have a pretty good chance of poisoning them with all the other buffs she has. So it's quite an impressive move, I think. Then finally, she's got the Meridian Channel, which increases her Spirit Penetration, deals some damage, and then gives her an AP refresh. If you're low on AP, you want her to use this, but I don't think she'll use it that often because it doesn't have a lot more damage than the other moves, unless you're hitting a single target and they have a high Spirit, then maybe. But I would not count on that for her AP. I don't feel like she's going to use it a ton. So, that was quite a kit. Let's move on to her LB, which is another very important part of her kit. She's got an AoE attack, slightly shorter range than her poison ability, and then this one has a chance to silence, base chance of 67%, so you're almost guaranteed to silence. You are guaranteed if it's on a high faith target that doesn't have any silence resistant. And then while the enemy is silenced, they also take 30% more AoE damage. It's just a crazy combo. Imagine that with a friendly Halloween Little Leela, for example, with her devastating AoE attacks. You just do a 1-2 punch, take away a large number of enemies. So I see a lot of power with this, especially against the current light teams that are very magic-oriented. Then she's got some interesting stuff in her main job, sub-job. She's got access to a missile attack that's piercing, it can hit several enemies, but after you use it, it increases your own chance of poisoning with other abilities. I feel like it could see play, but you have a heavy cost if you're using this, because you're either not running the non-reflectable attacks of the Rune Knight sub-job, or you're not running the haste and quicken that the time mage job can provide you. So it might be tough, but definitely an interesting and strong thing to have in her kit. And then she's got another ability that has a chance to paralyze, and if the enemy is paralyzed, they also get reduced agility, so they're basically paralyzed for even longer. I like both those abilities, but I like all of her sub-jobs. So first, the Rune Knight. If you're running this, you get access to range 5, Drain Evocation, super setup turn, increasing your magic by 100% for the follow-up attack, which could be your LB that has a little bit less range. So it's definitely a strong move. And then the other abilities are not reflectable. So when Celeste is released, if you're ever going to be fighting her, you need that sub-job. So you have some options that can't be reflected, and you can still kill her through her ability Absorption. And then finally, Time Mage sub-job. We're talking about haste, quicken, transposition. Manually, I think this will be the way to go. For auto, though, it's really hard to time a Time Mage and make sure that they play the right way. So I feel like you'll probably just want to slap Rune Knight on and be happy with that. Or if you're not fighting an enemy Celes and you don't care about the slash abilities, just go with her own sub-job and perhaps she'll increase her own chance of poisoning and then land a poison that way, and you'll get a win that you would otherwise not get. So we've looked at all this. Now, in a simple build, she ends up, again, surprisingly bulky, around 6,400 HP, which is about 1,000 more than, Starlet Elena and other units. Only 87 agility, not the fastest unit in the book. 421 luck, that's because I was equipping the Near card in her, so I do have 2 wind allies for that team and the vision cards that you see on screen. And she ends up with 100 wind attack, which is crazy. The fact that she's released alongside an elemental piece of equipment really increases her damage potential. So with 1400 magic and those mods, she will, if she doesn't outright kill the enemy, then the status effect might, but she will hit like a truck, and that's pretty impressive. And then she's got decent resistances to a bunch of stuff, so I expect her to take 2 hits before going down, then come back to life, and then keep fighting. She will be a naturally good partner for other teams with Joom, Halloween Little Leela, Winter Duartha. The Wind team just gets stronger and stronger as we get other releases, but I would also see her as a really good partner with King Mont eventually, because once players start using ice teams to counter potentially her and the Halloween Little Leela monster, well, you can just run King Mont instead of Joom potentially as your tank, and then you have some way to deal with all the ice damage, because he's going to be soaking that damage for a while, and they might never actually get to your wind units in the back. So just how much long-term value will she have is the big question that remains for me. I know that we will very shortly get a Celeste released, and Celeste is going to be able to absorb magical attacks, so most of Moore's kit. Moore does have a silence on her LB, which cannot be absorbed, and then she has the Rune Knight sub-job, which can deal damage through the absorption, but still, she loses access to most of her kit, which is going to be troublesome. I could see a case where if you're pairing her with a friendly tank and then somebody like Winter Duartha who has massive physical damage, you could potentially just take the enemy tank out with your physical attacks, and then Moore is able to finish her off with some other stuff. We just don't know yet how this relationship is going to go, and until Celeste is released, we won't have a way to know. But if you're very short on Viz and you have to make choices, you're considering to skip potentially some of the meta-defining releases in the near future, like Celeste, then perhaps I think you would be better off saving and not necessarily going for more. I think she'll be fantastic in the short term. She'll be very good right now to shake off the light meta, but I don't know if she's the best investment in the long term. Especially if you don't have the other wind units. If you don't own Joom, you don't intend on building her, you don't own the other wind powerhouses, then she's probably not the best investment, because I don't know that she'll fit rainbow teams that often. But yeah, that's my final thoughts. I think for manual players, you gotta go for her. She seems so fun, and everything she's got in her kit, paired with the fact that she can quicken, makes it incredibly good. I would totally run her as a quickener, and then whenever the enemy closes in on my team, I'm just gonna drop the CC and prevent them from even hitting me. And then if they take out my Quickener, well, re-raise. I'm going to come back. I don't know. That seems incredibly powerful to me. But otherwise, for other game modes, I would recommend you just wait and see. Wait a week. She's not going out that quickly. And if you miss out on 1 week, it's not the end of the world. Then in a week, we'll see her in guild battle at the high level. We'll see her in arena battles, and we'll be able to evaluate how good she is. And that's how we'll see. But just looking at her kit on paper, like we're doing right now, she seems good, but I don't think she's a must-pull. And I think if you're short on resources, you could very well skip her and then be more happy with some future units. And then finally, thoughts about her VC. I would like to release a video on that. I'll try to work on that shortly, but I don't feel like her VC is a must-pull. If you own the Blossoms in the Dark, you have a VC that gives you the 25 man-eater on magical attacks. So all you're really getting from her new VC is extra accuracy in the individual slot, and then some HP and earth resistance, which admittedly is overkill. So I feel like it's not necessarily worth it. If you do want to take the most out of a team with both, Howlett or Halloween Little Leela, and then Moore the Merrier, great. You're going to run Typhoon and her own VC, and great. But outside of that, I will run the Typhoon VC over her own on Moore the Merrier, because the 30% individual slot magic is much more important, in my opinion, than anything else. So I'm not even going to use her own VC on herself unless she's paired with another mage, which makes me just want to skip her VC. So that's my current stance on it. I'll do the detailed exercise in a short while, and hopefully I can release that in a video. But this is going to be it. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.